Hello once again, friends, neighbors, and fellow Christians, and welcome back to What the Bible Says, where we are studying and investigating and looking into God's Word so that we can, as best we can, rightly divide, handle right the Word of God. And so we are continuing in this series of lessons where we are studying about the last days kingdom that was foretold by Moses and the prophets that it would come in the last days. And so we've been studying this, and we've been studying the resurrection, which is one of the promises that was associated with the coming of that everlasting spiritual kingdom of Messiah. That the time would come when the saints would possess the kingdom, Daniel 7. And so as we are, let me transition here to, so my video hopefully doesn't get all blotchy. So we have been looking at then from Romans, because we studied in 1 Corinthians 15, and we are down to where Paul says that when the sting of death is removed, the sting of death is the law. And so when the corruptible puts on incorruption, the mortal puts on immortality, then would be brought to pass the saying that is written, and he quotes Isaiah 25:8. And so he's talking about the resurrection would be the fulfilling of the law of Moses, because the law of Moses, was the sting of death. And so through parallelism then, we wanted to look at some of the text and context of Paul's letter to the Romans, again because Paul taught the same thing everywhere in every church. Okay? So when we look and compare, rightly divide, compare these scriptures, then we can see that Paul says something over here to the Romans that's parallel to what he said to the Corinthians, and we can harmonize these things. And so we're looking at Romans. We've come through chapter 1. We're down in chapter 2 now, particularly to verse 11. And this is where he says, there is no respect of persons with God. And just as he had said in verse 6, that he would render to every man according to his works. Those who don't obey, then they're going to receive indignation and wrath of the Jew first and also the Gentile. But every man that works good, verse 10, the Jew first and also the Gentile. Why? Because there is no respect of persons with God. And this is where I wanted to take maybe a deviation, if you will, to, and this is going to be probably part one of two parts, where we want to look at the Gentiles. Again, because he has just said twice, whether they do good and obey or whether they do not obey, it's to the Jew and the Gentile, because God is no respecter of persons. All right, and so I want to do a little bit of background study in considering from long ages ago how God dealt with the Gentile nations, and then to bring that up into the New Testament and to demonstrate how that these things are coming to a head, and how Paul is applying these prophecies during his ministry to demonstrate the fulfillment of all these things, again, both Jew and Gentile. Okay, so what we want to do is, I want to go to Deuteronomy, and I want to read some here from the first two chapters of Deuteronomy. And I want us to notice some very, very interesting things here as we look at the texts of Deuteronomy 1 and 2. All right, so it starts out, these be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on this side of the Jordan in the wilderness, in the plain over against the Red Sea, between Paran and Tophel and Laban and Hazeroth and Dizahab. Again, bear with me through the pronunciation of some of these names. There are 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh Barnea. And it came to pass in the 40th year, now notice these timelines here, It came to pass in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, that Moses spake unto the children of Israel according unto all that the Lord had given him in commandment unto them, after he had slain Sihon, the king of the Amorites, which dwelt in Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, which dwelt at Ashtaroth in Edrei. On this side of the Jordan, in the land of Moab, began Moses to declare this law, saying, all right, so verse 6, the Lord our God spake unto us in Horeb, saying, you have dwelt long enough in this mount. Turn you and take your journey, and go to the mount of the Amorites, and unto all the places nigh thereunto, in the plain, in the hills, and in the vale, and in the south, and by the seaside, to the land of the Canaanites, and unto Lebanon, unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Behold, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give unto them and to their seed after them. And I spake unto you at that time, saying, I am not able to bear you myself alone. The Lord your God hath multiplied you, and behold, you are this day as the stars of heaven for multitude. The Lord God of your fathers make you 1,000 times so many more as you are, and bless you as he hath promised you. All right, verse 12. How can I myself alone bear your cumbrance and your burden and your strife? Take you wise men and understanding and known among your tribes, and I will make them rulers over you. And you answered me and said, this thing which thou hast spoken is good for us to do. So I took the chief of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, captains over thousands, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and officers among your tribes. Now notice this. And I charged your judges at that time, saying, hear the causes between your brethren, and judge righteously. Do you see how that comes back into our text in Romans 2? Judge righteously between every man and his brother, and the stranger that is with him. Who was the stranger, folks? Well, those were the Gentile proselytes. Now notice this. He just told them, you judge righteously between the Israelites and between the stranger. Every man is brother. That's the Israelites. These judges were to judge righteously between the Israelites and the stranger. Notice verse 17, please. You shall not respect persons in judgment. You see that? That is the exact concept that Paul is applying in Romans 2. If they do bad, or if they do good, then it's to the Jew first and to the Gentile also, because there's no respect of persons with God. The exact same concept right here. And we should get a point right here. What God required of men, that is these judges, that they judge righteously between the Israelites and the proselytes, the Gentiles, that there was to be no respect of persons in judgment. What God required of these men was the very character of God himself. Because Paul said there is no respect of persons with God. Right? Okay. That is the exact concept right here. You shall not respect persons in judgment. You shall hear the small as well as the great. Notice, you shall not be afraid of the face of man. You see that? Again, this is the very character of God. God does not look on the height or the stature of man as man looks upon man. God looks on the heart. That's what he's telling these people here. It doesn't matter their social standing. It doesn't matter if they're Israelites or proselytes. You don't be afraid of the appearance of man, his stature, because you're not to have respect to persons in judgment. Why? And again, why is that? Why is he saying you shall not respect persons in judgment? Don't be afraid of the face of man. Here's why. For the judgment is God's. And the cause that is too hard for you, bring it to me and I will hear it. All right, so again, they are being instructed to judge righteously between everyone. No respect to persons in judgment, because the judgment they make is God's judgment. Because God is no respecter of persons. Isn't that beautiful? And I commanded you at that time in all things which you should do. And when we departed from Horeb, we went through all that great and terrible wilderness, which you saw by the way of the mountains of the Amorites, as the Lord our God commanded us, and we came to Kadesh Barnea. And I said unto you, you are coming to the mount of the Amorites, which the Lord our God doth give us. All right, verse 21. Behold, the Lord thy God hath set the land before thee. Go up and possess it. Again, notice the prolepsis here, folks. God's given it to you, but they hadn't even got into the land yet. So again, you see the concept of prolepsis here. It was a done deal because God said so. All right, but the Lord thy God has set the land before thee. Go up and possess it, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath said unto thee, fear not, neither be discouraged. Okay, that's what was told them. And you came near unto me, every one of you, and said, we will send men before us, and they shall search out the land, and bring us word again by what way we must go up, and into what cities we shall come. And the saying pleased me well. And I took 12 men of you, one of a tribe. So he took one person out of all 12 tribes. And they turned and went up into the mountain, and came unto the valley of Eshcol, and searched it out. And they took of the fruit of the land in their hands, and they brought it down unto us, and brought us word again, and said, it is a good land which the Lord our God doth give us. Notwithstanding, you would not go up, but rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God, and murmured in your tents, and said, because the Lord hated us, he hath brought us forth out of the land of Egypt to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us. All right, verse 28. Whither shall we go up? Our brethren have discouraged our heart, saying. Now notice what the spies' report was. The people is greater and taller than we. The cities are great and walled up to heaven. And moreover, we have seen the sons of the Anakims there. Then I said unto you, dread not, neither be afraid of them. The Lord your God, now notice this, the Lord your God which goeth before you, he shall fight for you, according to all that he did for you in Egypt, before your eyes, and in the wilderness, where thou hast seen how the Lord thy God bare thee, as a man doth bear his son, in all the way that you went until you came unto this place. Yet in this thing you did not believe the Lord your God, who went in the way before you, to search you out a place to pitch your tents in the fire by night, to show you what way you should go, and in a cloud by day. Just as a side note, notice again that God was concealed. His presence was concealed in a cloud. He never came out of the cloud. All right. And the Lord heard the voice of your words, and was wroth, and sware, saying, surely there shall not one of these men of this evil generation see that good land which I swear to give unto your fathers, save Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him will I give the land that he hath trodden upon, and to his children. Why? Because he hath completely followed the Lord. And the Lord was angry with me for your sakes, saying, thou also shalt not go in thither. And this, no doubt, refers back to the time when he and Aaron said, you rebels, shall we fetch water from the rock? And he smote the rock when God said, speak to the rock, And Moses said, shall we, instead of giving God the glory? And the Lord punished Moses for that and would not allow him to go over into the promised land. But Joshua, the son of Nun, which standeth before thee, he shall go in thither. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. And that's the land of promise. Now, I've got a question for you, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next chapter. Verse 35, he says, surely there shall not one of these men of this generation, this evil generation. Now, folks, which generation is being referred to here? Is God referring to a generation that would be yet in our future? And again, do you see how foolish that idea is? But again, according to the futurists' misinterpretation of Matthew 24:34, where Jesus said all these things will come on this generation, and they reinterpret and reconstruct that passage to mean that generation yet in our future. You see the point? All right, let's go on. And then he said, moreover, your little ones, which you said should be a prey, and your children, which in that day had no knowledge between good and evil, they shall go in thither. And unto them will I give it, and they shall possess it. But as for you, turn you and take your journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. Then you, now notice what happens here. I mean, this is just really demonstrative of the nature of mankind. Then you answered and said unto me, we have sinned against the Lord. We will go up and fight, according to all that the Lord our God commanded us. And when you had girded every man his weapons of war, you were ready to go up into the hill. And the Lord said unto me, say unto them, go not up, neither fight, for I am not among you, lest you be smitten before your enemies. So I spake unto you, and you would not hear, but rebelled against the commandment of the Lord, and went presumptuously up into the hill. And the Amorites which dwelt in that mountain came out against you, and chased you as bees do. And that's just funny to me. I know it's a serious situation, but that's just humorous to me. And you picture people running and screaming and jerking their clothes off and so forth when they're being chased by a flock of yellow jackets. I mean, we understand the concept perfectly. These Amorites came out against them like a flock of bees. And it says, and destroyed you in Seir, even unto Hormah. And you returned and wept before the Lord, but the Lord would not hearken to your voice, neither give ear unto you. So again, God said go, they said no. Then, when they said, okay, we'll go, God said don't go, and they went. So again, that reconfirms what I keep telling you as we study these things. Everything God says to do, they don't do, and everything God says don't do it, they jump in and do it. Again, that's the typical nature of mankind. And so you abode in Kadesh many days, according to the days that you abode there. Chapter 2 begins, then we turned and took our journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, as the Lord spake unto me. Now notice this, and we compassed Mount Seir many days. Well, this is kind of a condensed version, if you will, a seriously condensed version of the 40-year wandering in the wilderness. We compassed Mount Seir many days. And the Lord spake unto me, saying, you have compassed this mountain long enough. Turn you northward, and command thou the people, saying, you are to pass through the coasts of your brethren, the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir, and they shall be afraid of you. Take you good heed unto yourselves, therefore. Meddle not with them, in other words, don't mess with them. Meddle not with them, for I will not give you of their land, no, not so much as a foot breadth. Why? Because I have given Mount Seir unto Esau for a possession. Isn't that interesting? Now, when we look back at Genesis 36, Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters and all the persons of his house and his cattle and all his beasts and all his substance which he had got in the land of Canaan, and they went into the country from the face of his brother Jacob. And remember, Jacob and Esau were the twin brothers. Okay, so, and remember, Esau sold his birthright, and Jacob stole the blessing from their father. All right, so you remember the story. For their riches were more than they might dwell together, and that the land wherein they were strangers could not bear them because of their cattle. And again, isn't that interesting how that is parallel with Lot and Abraham, and how they separated because of, and we'll see that as we get on down in the text. But anyway, thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. Now later on, the destruction would come upon Edom that we read about in Isaiah 34, where it says, "Come near, you nations, to hear, and hearken, you people, let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world and all things that come forth from it. For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them, he hath delivered them to the slaughter. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. All the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their host shall fall down, as the leaf falleth from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea," that's Edom, "and upon the people of my curse to judgment." Verse 8, now again, read the whole chapter. I'm just hitting a couple of highlights here. "For it is the day of the Lord." You see that? This was a day of the Lord, judgment upon Edom, upon the descendants of Esau. Later than what we're reading about here. "For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. And the streams thereof shall be turned into pitch, and the dust thereof into brimstone, and the land shall become burning pitch. It shall not be quenched night nor day. The smoke thereof shall go up forever. From generation to generation it shall lie waste. None shall pass through it forever and ever." So again, we've looked at this in the past lessons, and how that this is identical language that we see of this day of the Lord judgment against Edom, in which the earth, the material earth and universe was not destroyed. Time did not come to an end. This identical language is what Peter uses in 2 Peter chapter 3 of the day of the Lord judgment against the body of Moses, Old Covenant Israel. All right, so they are instructed, don't meddle with them, because I have given Mount Seir unto Esau for a possession. So, sounds like Esau had a land of promise, doesn't it? All right, let's go on. "You shall buy meat of them for money, that you may eat, and you shall also buy water of them for money, that you may drink. For the Lord thy God hath blessed thee in all thy works of thy hand. He knoweth thy walking through this great wilderness these 40 years. The Lord thy God hath been with thee, thou hast lacked nothing." That's the compassing Mount Seir many days, encapsulated there in one little phrase. "And when we passed by from our brethren, the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, through the way of the plain of Elath, and from Eziongarber, we turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab." All right, now again, notice how this text here seems to indicate that Esau, which was a Gentile nation, had a promised land. All right, so they come to the wilderness of Moab. All right, "And the Lord said unto me, Distress not the Moabites, neither contend with them in battle, for I will not give thee of their land for a possession." Why? "Because I have given Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession." How about that? Now, let's recall the account here in Genesis 19. "And he looked," this is Abraham looked, "he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of that country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. And Lot went up out of Zoar, and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him. And remember, his wife turned, looked back, told not to. She turned, looked back, turned the pillar of salt. So it's just Lot and his 2 daughters. For he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. Now notice what happens here. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Now see the picture here in the mind of these 2 girls, these 2 daughters. They think the entire earth has been destroyed. All of humanity has been destroyed. That's their picture. That's their concept. They think, well, because there's no seed and our daddy's old, then mankind's going to cease to exist. So they take it into their own hands, as it were, to rectify this problem. Our father is old, there's not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow, that the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. All right, so we get some history here, that now that these children of Israel are being instructed, don't bother, don't meddle with, don't distress the Moabites. Why? Because I have given the land of Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. Again, sounds like Lot had a promised land, doesn't it? Now let's look a little bit more about Lot. You remember from Genesis 11, these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot. So Lot is Abram's nephew. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarah was barren, she had no child. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, and his son Abram's, or his Sarai is Abram's wife. Can't see what I'm reading here. And they went forth with them from Ur the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. And in the day, it says, and the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. All right, now we come to chapter 12 then. A familiar text. The Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of the country, from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, into the land that I'll show you. I'll make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee, and I'll make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. I'll bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee. And in thee, shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. Into the land of Canaan they came. All right, then in chapter 13, when Abram went up out of Egypt, and again, you go back up and read the events of when Abram and Sarah went into Egypt, and the account there with Pharaoh. And anyway, read that. But Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that they had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, and silver, and in gold, and he went on his journeys from the south even unto Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together. For their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelt then in the land. And verse 8 continues, and Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt go to the left hand, then I will go to the right. If thou depart to the right hand, I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes, and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. And Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves one from another. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. So again, we see the same concept here as we just looked at with Jacob and Esau when they separated because of their vast quantities of possessions. The land wouldn't support them. All right. Now, when we come to Genesis 19, again, back up and read, and when the angels came to Abraham and so forth, and said they're going to destroy Sodom. Anyway, back up and get the context there, because we're just going to get some highlights here in Genesis 19. All right, there came two angels to Sodom at even, in the evening. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them. And he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, behold, now my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early, and go on your ways. They said, no, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, Lot that is, pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him. Now notice what he did. And he entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. Isn't that a curious coincidence there, folks? That on the evening before the Lord's judgment upon Sodom and Gomorrah, that Lot and these angels had a feast of unleavened bread. Isn't that interesting? Kind of sounds like Lot had a Passover feast, doesn't it? I mean, the similarities are just striking. And of course, you can look at 2 Peter 2, 7 through 9, where Peter says that Lot was a righteous man. All right, so they are instructed in their journeying here, don't bother the Moabites, because I have given the land of Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. But now notice what happened. The Emims dwelt there in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims, which also are accounted giants. And that word there is the Rephaim. You can see I've got the note here. And it seems that these are synonyms for the same people, or the same, these giants, how they were referred to in different cultures, perhaps. The Rephaim, the Emim, the Anakims. Okay, which also accounted for giants as the Anakims, but the Moabites call them Emims. The Horims also dwelt in Seir before time, but the children of Esau succeeded them when they had destroyed them from before them, now notice this, and dwelt in their stead, as Israel did unto the land of his possession, which the Lord gave unto him. Do you see the comparison here? Esau and his descendants was given a possession, a land of promise. The children of Lot were given a land of promise, just like Israel was given a possession, the land of promise. Do you see that? Now rise up, said I, and get you over the brook Zered. And we went over the brook Zered. And the space, and that means the length of time, in which we came from Kadesh Barnea until we were come over the brook Zered was 38 years. And so this must be the time period from when the spies went in and came back until this point in time, 38 years. But they wandered in the wilderness a total of 40 years. Okay, so they until we were come over the brook Zered, it was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war were wasted out from among the host, as the Lord sware unto them. Now we see this, we look at Numbers 32, 6 through 12. Moses said to the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, shall your brethren go to war, and you sit here? And wherefore discourage you the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which the Lord hath given them? Thus did your fathers when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. For when they went up into the valley of Escol and saw the land, they discouraged the heart of the children of Israel that they should not go up into the land which the Lord had given them. And the Lord's anger was kindled the same time, and he sware, saying, surely none of the men that came up out of Egypt from 20 years old and upward shall see the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua the son of Nun, for they have fully or wholly followed the Lord. And so again, that's parallel with what we've just been reading. And he says here that the Lord sware that they would not enter in. And we saw that, just read that in chapter 1 here of Deuteronomy, verses 34 through 39, which you see on your screen there in the tooltip pop-up. And again, this is what Paul refers to in Hebrews 3, verse 8, beginning when he said, harden not your hearts as in the provocation in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation, and said, they do always err in their hearts, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. The lesson, Paul says, take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. Please notice this, folks. Paul says, quoting here, wherefore I was grieved with that generation. He didn't say this generation. He said that generation. Well, when we're reading this from what Moses says, God said, surely there shall not one of these men of this evil generation see that good land. Do you see this, folks? I mean, I know to those of us who understand fulfilled eschatology, this is as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. When God says this generation, he means this generation, the generation to whom he's talking to. He doesn't mean that generation, eons and millennia in the future. And when Paul says that generation, he's referring back to 1,500 years earlier. That generation. He didn't say this generation because he didn't mean this generation. And when Jesus said, this generation will not pass away till all these things be fulfilled, Jesus meant this generation, not That generation, millennia in the future, again, folks, we've got to let the Bible interpret itself. That's why I keep hammering this point so much. It takes interpretation, and it takes professionally educated help to misunderstand something this simple. This generation means the people to whom God is talking to. That generation is not the generation he's talking to. It's that simple. All right. For indeed the hand of the Lord was against them to destroy them from among the host until they were consumed. So it came to pass, when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, that the Lord spake unto me, saying, Thou art to pass over through Ar, the coast of Moab, this day. And when thou comest nigh over against the children of Ammon, distress them not, nor meddle with them, for I will not give thee of the land of the children of Ammon any possession. Why? Because I have given it unto the children of Lot for a possession. And again, the concluding verse there in Genesis 19. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ammi. The same is the father of the children of Ammon. So you have the Moabites and you have the Ammonites, who are the descendants of Lot, who each had a promised land. They had a possession. That also was accounted a land of the giants. Giants dwelt therein in old time, and the Ammonites called them Zamzumians. And if we look at Genesis 14:5, it says, And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer, and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims, that's the giants, in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, and the Zuzims, maybe, in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh Kerathaim. Again, forgive me for these pronunciations, but anyway, this shows us. This is referring to the giants who were the descendants of Anak. All right, so verse 21 then, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims. Now notice this, but the Lord destroyed them, that's the giants, before them, that's the descendants of Lot. And they, the descendants of Lot, succeeded them, the giants, and dwelt in their stead, as he did to the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, when he destroyed the Horims before. Do you see that? Do you see the pattern here? I mean, the only thing that we were ever taught was God fought for Israel and drove the people out of the land of Canaan, and they inherited the promised land. And we were never taught about all these other accounts where God did the exact same thing for Gentile nations. Isn't that just stunning? And the Avims, which dwelt in Hazarim, even unto Azah, the Captorims, which came forth out of Captor, destroyed them and dwelt in their stead. So there's another Gentile nation that took possession of a land. Rise you up, take your journey, and pass over the river Arnon. Behold, I have given into thine hand Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to possess it and to contend with him in battle. Again, you see the prolepsis here. I have given this into your hand. They hadn't got there yet. But it's a done deal because God said so. That's the prolepsis. This day will I begin to put the dread of thee and the fear of thee upon the nations that are under the whole heaven, who shall hear report of thee, and shall tremble and be in anguish because of thee. And you can go ahead and read the remainder of the chapter there. I'm going to stop here with this because I just wanted to show you from these passages here in Deuteronomy How, and I mean, this is unquestionable. Just looking at what the text says, how God, in what he did for Israel to take possession of the land of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey, to inherit the promised land, how he brought them up out of Egypt to go there and do that, he has done the same thing for these other Gentile nations. I mean, isn't that just amazing? It is to me. So, again, as we look at these things, and again, as I said, this is going to be at least a two-part study, and how we're going to bring these things all together when we come into the New Testament, specifically in Paul's ministry to the Gentiles. And we see the beauty of God's plan coming together. Okay, so as I said, we're going to stop here, and we're going to conclude our study in this lesson at this point, and then, Lord willing, in the next lesson, continue this thought and hopefully wrap up this idea, demonstrating how God is no respecter of persons. And again, that's demonstrated in 1 Timothy 1, 15 and 16, where Paul, how he told Timothy that the Lord had set him, Paul, as an example first, chiefly, in that he has had patience with and saved the chiefest of sinners, because God is no respecter of persons. That doesn't mean universal salvation. It still requires obedience on man's part. God's not willing that any should perish, said Peter. You know the passage well. But those who refuse to obey the Lord, just like the children of Israel refused to go do what God told them to because of what the report of the 10 spies who were cowardly. When people refuse to do what God says, then that's where the problem comes in. It's not a flaw on God's part. It's not an inability on God's part to save man. It's the fact that God cannot lie. That is a huge factor in interpreting and in understanding the Scriptures. It is impossible for God to lie. God is no respecter of persons. God said, do this, and every time man did this, he was saved. He was pleasing to God. He received a reward. And every time God said, don't do that, and man went right ahead and did it, then it wasn't a good outcome. So the bottom line, the sum total of all of it is, do what God says. Take His word as it is written, in context, and how the audience to whom these things were written and spoken, how they would have understood these things. Again, that's why I keep insisting that you study the Bible in its context. Let the Bible interpret itself. This is the only way that we can arrive at the truth of the Scriptures and potentially come together in more unity on the Word of God. All right, so again, I thank you for your precious time in studying with us through yet another lesson. Please don't forget to hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and study with us, folks. Share these videos out to your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, and so forth, and encourage them to just study the Bible. And again, that is my ultimate goal, is just to encourage you and everyone to study the Bible in context. Okay, until our next lesson, I pray that God will bless you richly in your study of His Word, and you have a blessed day.